Okay, I hope, Connie, you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. So good afternoon, good morning, good wherever you are. I hope it's a good day for you. My name is Fenyon Wendy, and I'm the Chief Resident at the STEM Advocacy Institute, SAi, based in Boston. Very excited to have you here join us at our last monthly meeting of 2020. It's been quite a ride and super excited for 2021. And we will continue our monthly seminars and chats with both residents and external members. And so just to give you a quick overview what SAI is, so we are an incubator providing really support and access to accelerate the building of tools and programs to strengthen the networks of access. And for us, it's really this accessibility, diversity, and inclusivity in science. And the connection between science and society is what we really spend most of our time exploring and strengthening. And so our residents are working on a wide variety of projects. And I really encourage you to check out our website. And this list continues to grow. And we are all driven by this very fundamental question about connecting the link between science and society. And our goal is, we think that there's, we believe there's there's no one way of approaching this question. There's multiple ways to approach it. And so our core function is to work together, supporting each other and helping move forward. And that's always a challenge, people work in silos, but we're trying to break those silos and bring everybody together in one unit. And so I wanted to also take a minute here and welcome our three new junior residents, Gabriela, Priscilla, and Rosario. And they were just in our C4 fellows class, and they'll be joining us for the next year, continuing to build on their projects. And so please go to our residence page and learn more about their projects. We also have a news feature. You can learn more about their projects. They're really building some really cool stuff. And then also welcome to Claire Hosovitsky, who is our new communications officer. As you can imagine, it's a big challenge getting the word out. So we're always looking to grow different components of our organization. And I'll be introducing other people later as the months go by and people join and so forth. And so today I'm super excited to welcome Connie. Connie, we met, I just looked back where we met Connie. We met back in, I think it was Bangkok at the UNESCO conference. That's when we first met. And that was back in, I think, 2017 or something like that. And I got to learn about the Exploratory, and we've kept in touch ever since. And it's been wonderful to see you continue your work. And so Connie is the founder and director of the Exploratory, and I will let her tell you more about the Exploratory. I won't steal her thunder, but she did a PhD in virology at Harvard and a postdoc, I believe at the School of Public Health, right, Connie?
Yep.
Exactly. And so she's had a diverse career path, and hopefully we'll get to hear maybe a little bit about that in the conversation. And Connie, welcome to this chat. We're really looking forward to learn more from you and have a conversation. And for those of you watching, this is a conversation. It ends up being very much a conversation, and people can jump in and ask questions. So these are very engaging and open access, shall we say. So Connie, with that, welcome. And I'll stop sharing so you can do your slides.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, and thanks for inviting me. I love what SAI is doing, the breadth of all the projects that have been initiated, and so really happy to be here and share a little bit about what I do with the Exploratory and just a little bit about the journey. So you mentioned what my formal training is. I also say in addition to running the Exploratory, one of the things that I was doing as a job after, as I was establishing the Exploratory, or its predecessor was running Science Club for Girls, which is another nonprofit organization based here in the Boston area. And the last year and a half or so, I've actually joined the faculty of a new graduate school called now the High Meadows Graduate School of Teaching and Learning, where we offer master's degree programs for folks with a STEM background, and so that we can engage more people in science literacy. And one of our competencies, if you will, that we focus on is actually teaching for justice. So thinking a lot about, the intersection, as you will, of science and society, and science and math and society, and making sure that our future teachers and future students also have a critical perspective on STEM education. So I will share my screen, and excited to talk about the exploratory. As you said, I'm hoping that this is more of a conversation than me talking. So please, Gabriel, Rosario, Claire, and etc. Jump in and to ask. So I just want to give you sort of like an overview of what the Exploratory about. The Exploratory as an official organization was established a few years ago, but I have been going to Ghana to work with teachers for about 10 years or so. And the mission of the Exploratory is so that we can empower educators and inspire students, and around certain aspects, right? Not just knowing about science, but also to inspire them to be curious, courageous, and community-minded. So they see the application and see their role in the development and of their countries, as well as the development of science. And we want to make sure that science is not just practical, but is also joyful, and that it's collaborative as well. So let me go to the next slide. So here are two wonderful people that we have worked with and continue to work with. One is Gloria, who is one of our students, and one is Henrietta. And hopefully what they say here represents what we are hoping for our teachers and our students. So can I call on people to read things?
Perhaps maybe you can go ahead, Connie.
I will go ahead. So Gloria, right? She said, her perspective, I believe that science was difficult, which is, one of the things that both teachers and students have told us. Like, they think, oh, science is something that I cannot do. I'm not a scholar. But, because of their opportunity with us in our Exploratory, they were given an environment in which they changed their perspective about their relationship with science and their relationship with their futures as well, so that they see as an opportunity for them to make their communities a better place. From the capacity building side, if you will, on the teacher side, Henrietta has been one of our teachers who's been with us for a long time, and teaching about electronics, for example, and just hands-on science was a difficulty for her. But because we had given them the training, and they had been able to share, they not only build their own confidence and ability to teach, but also build the capacity of the other people and teachers in their schools to teach, which I'll mention in a minute. So what we had really thought about, in terms of our goals is also, how do we provide and be partner in providing quality education, and of course also gender equality. So the Exploratory, we have, I'll tell you later again, we have about 750 students that we work with, and about 85% of them are girls. And we work in the public schools in Ghana, primarily in lower resourced areas. And I will also talk about that in a minute. And we work with about 4 different districts and about 19 different schools. That was not the case at the beginning. For a long time, we really only worked with 4 schools in 1 district where we worked. So you can ask me why I decided to go to Ghana. And one of the reasons is, frankly, as someone coming from the US, Ghana is an English-speaking district and country. And and they're relatively politically stable. So that was two incentives. And the other reasons that's listed here are the reasons that we decided that it would be beneficial to work in Ghana, in addition to the community conversations that we had with teachers and educators themselves, right? So when I started working in Ghana, and these stats also from 2016, there's a lack of qualified teachers, right? And so there's a lot of equipment. So between the two, education means that there's a lot of rote learning, right? Everything is like, I'll write something on the board, you memorize these terms, you memorize these facts, and you regurgitate it during your exams. And then, okay, great. And then there's nothing to teach with, right? Our teachers, when we've talked to them, they're like, everything is what they call abstract, right? So, but the teachers that we worked with and talked with firmly understand the importance of having equipment, right? And materials for them to do their work. And as you can see in the bottom, only 24% of women, of those who are in STEM are women. And part of it is a lot to gender expectations in the country, but also there's a lack of awareness of career opportunities. So that was one of the other reasons that we're interested in working there. So, because of these understanding of needs, when we went, we approached our work in 3 different ways, right? One is thinking about, how we could provide ongoing professional development for our teachers. And then for the students themselves, to how we introduce hands-on learning to them without being able to provide the entire school with the materials, right? Because we are a small nonprofit, we can't do that. So the way that we approach that is, okay, we will actually create these after-school clubs that will train some teachers who are already really interested, who can actually then work with young people. And then we do provide, and while we say that, we're working with these teachers for these clubs to provide learning materials, at the end of the day, those learning materials are actually available to the entire school. And what we have found is that teachers, and 2 things happen, and you will see in the impact. So while we say we work with about 700 kids, the impact is actually the broadness of the school, which would probably be 2,500 to 3,000 students, because of 2 things. One, the teachers who have been trained with us, other teachers often tap them and say, can you actually come and do that experiment or do that demo in my class so that my students can see it? Or if the teachers are more confident, for example, junior high school teachers who oftentimes have a background in science, they might come to our teachers and say, hey, can I borrow the equipment so that I can actually do this experiment or demo, et cetera, in my classroom, right? So those are teachers that we don't directly interact with, but who will benefit. So I'll talk about the other things that we do, hopefully with some more fun pictures at the end. So this just another rendering and model of what we think about our longer term outcomes are. Let me do the pointer thing here. So, the clubs are what we do. That's sort of like the basis of what we are working on. And that's only possible when we actually have good facilitator training. And that allows us not only to build curiosity and confidence within the young people that we work with, but actually with the facilitators and our teachers as well, right? And again, we provide the kits so that they can do the work. And, one can think about inspirational and equitable learning spaces as actual like labs, but in fact, any educational space could be that where teachers and students come together, and sometimes actually when students themselves come together. So, okay, I'm gonna go to the next. Stop me anytime if I'm going too fast. So this is just map of, where we work, right? So Ghana, again, is a West African country, surrounded by a lot of Francophone countries. And they also just had their election. And the country with all the peaceful transitions that we have seen. So this is Ghana right here, right outlined here. And we really only work in the very coastal regions. And this is a zoom in of that area and where our school sites are. So we're in Accra, which is, again, the capital of Ghana. But again, we work in mostly lower resourced government schools. We have a cluster in Pokwasi, which over the last 10 years have developed from a peri-urban area to a reasonably actually almost middle class, or at least part of it middle class bedroom community, if you will, for Accra. And then we have a collaboration over here in Berkuso, which is where Ashesi University is, which some of you may know, and which developed because we have a partner who was working with the schools there. And the expansion also to Nsawam, which is where our other sites are, also as a result of our of a collaboration. Also chance meetings, Manuel, like, somebody that I met at a UN meeting, and she said, hey, I run this program for girls and I pay their school fees. And I've talked to teachers there and they think that they've told us that science education is what they really want. So can we collaborate? So we said, yes, absolutely. So that's how that expansion happened.
Collaborations are great.
Yeah.
They don't happen enough. And I think this is great that you were able to do that.
Yeah, and that's an approach that we take to expansion, if you will, which is that we in this case are the technical partners, if you will, right? And those other organizations have community relationships. So schools, educators, the community already trust them, and so we don't have to actually do all that hard work of building, establishing ourselves and building trust, which is really hard to do. So these are just, a couple of our kids in action. We have like the little cute notebooks, which I should, that's one right here that we use. And over time, one of the things that we're really trying to do is, hey, so these are all, African scientists and, well, okay, that's Katherine Johnson actually. And then, just really giving them a chance to like, hey, these are the people, these are your people and you can see yourselves, right? We're thinking about representation. And then, yeah, as you see, we give them things as simple as, magnifying glasses or as complicated as microscopes, because even though they're generally resource poor areas, they also deserve to have nice equipment, if you will. So I'm happy to answer more questions about the clubs later, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things that we have done, one of which is a design challenge that we've created. So what we have seen is that the kids are really excited. They learn about anything from, body systems to, as you see, the environment. They have a physics curriculum, some with chemistry. And over time, we said, how do we get our kids who are at all these places excited and thinking about how they could apply what they have learned in science to community problems, right? So what we have done in the last 2 or 3 years is actually created a design challenge, which we call Solve for Ghana. Right. So so we have done this about 3 rounds, and we do it always in partnership. So the goal is to ask, we usually identify the community problem for them, and then ask them to expand on it. And then they actually work then in teams, sometimes that are inter-school teams that are randomly created. And then they have a final that they attend. The last few years, one of the design challenges has been about, light, right? For a long time, they have had intermittent power shortages. So we said, hey, you've had an entire electronics curriculum this last year, learned about, circuits, etc. Let's pose a problem to you, which is that, well, often the light goes out and you still need to study and do homework. So what can be done? So they went about, some of them trying to create solar powered cells, either for the community. Some of them presented ideas around using chemically based batteries. Some of them used the materials that were provided for them to, in this case, create a light that not only have light coming from one side, but because they study together, have light that are coming out from 4 different sides so that they can actually go and work together. And this is a particularly interesting story because, yes, the person down here is Angela Merkel. And this is a partnership that we had with Dex Technology. So Princess here is the person who actually designed this light box up here. And her story is that I used to have to go to my friend's house all the time because they have electricity, right? Whereas I live in this building that is not finished. But when the electricity goes out for all of us, I can't actually study. None of us can study either. So she's designed this light box, and when the electricity goes out, now they can come to her house to actually study. And so our partner at Dex Technologies, Charles Ofori, amazing guy, presented this at one of his interactions, if you will, with the public, and both brought Prince there and introduced this idea to the German Prime Minister. So that's one. Subsequent design challenges have been around like, okay, you have also learned about body systems. So for the primary kids, imagine that you have to design something for to tell your community, for those who are illiterate, right, about the impact of smoking. So build a 3D model that can actually illustrate the effect of secondhand smoke. And for the older kids, we say a similar challenge, but hey, a public health person has come in to talk to your community. Again, they need something that is material in order to share with older members of your community about these health problems. Can you help them create an artifact? So the kids definitely jumped to the rose up to the challenge. So let me go back then. Therefore, this is some of the ideas from the first challenge with there's no light, there's doomsaw, which is this word, on off is what it means. So some kids actually created a wind turbine as an idea. Some kids created, again, like I said, a chemically based battery system, etc. And here's another light example.
How much time do you give them to come up with these ideas?
They come together at about 9 a.m. in the morning. We give them a little, overview of what the challenge is. Especially in the first time, we gave them some tools around thinking about problem identification and brainstorming. And then they, including lunch, right, they have about 2 o'clock to come up with a draft, right? So basically, they don't come up with the prototype right away. So they come up with an idea and then they present it. And then those that get selected in the following week, they come together. So there's probably only like 8 to 10 groups that come together. And then they have another day to build a semi-working prototype for the design.
So it sounds like they pitch. The first day is like come up with an idea, pitch, and they get selected. And then the following week, they come back. Those are selected to continue building
exactly
on their ideas.
Yeah.
Cool. There's a question in the chat here from Gabriela. What are the incentives to participate?
For the students or for the teachers?
I guess both.
Yeah, for the students, really because it's fun or their friends come. We have a semi-selection process because there's actually a lot of interest in participating. And so we actually have the teachers go and identify students who, not only those, and not especially those who are already doing well in science, right? We said who might actually benefit from doing hands-on. And of course, because we have a focus on girls as well, that's the other selection. Their continued attendance actually is important for them to come back the following year. And for the teachers, initially we had provided stipends for them because this is an after-school opportunity, but over time and because of resource constraints on our part, especially as we were expanding, we provided them some incentive when they came to the training. And also then the other incentive for them is actually they have the materials that we provide for them.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Okay, so I don't know why the top is not filled, but what students also do in this case is now they have the capacity to actually identify problems in their community, right? So this group went around and say, you know what, we have these ladies who sell food at the tuck shops over there, and we like to eat over there, and some community members come, but there are never enough chairs to sit. So as an end of year sort of give back to the community project, what they actually did was collected some money and solicited some waste materials, if you will. So those yellow jerry cans are sort of available. And then they brought some nails and some board, and they put together and, designed and redesigned and created a few benches that they presented to these ladies who sell food to them. So yeah. So anyway, so there you go. These are the other models that they had built around, the body. Okay. All right. So the other thing that in terms of capacity is thinking about, how we can leverage what people that we know here in the US, right, and elsewhere, so that we can actually provide more, whether it's materials or training to the teachers who are there. So as I had mentioned, Charles, sorry that I've covered his face, is an incredible inventor and really community minded. So he has started a company called Dex Technologies with another friend. So as you see here, in the beginning, when we used to teach electronics, it's, myself and volunteers, etc. Sorry, who sat around and like cut wires and go to the market and buy nails and pack together tinfoil, etc., and put it into a little packet and give it to our teachers, right? Obviously, we all know that this is a common problem, and Charles's solution to this problem was actually create what he called a lab on a desk, right? Lab in a box. So it's a science set that he started a company to create. And because we were able to get a grant from the Australian government, we actually became one of the first sort of investors, major investors in his science set. So that both allowed our teachers and our students to actually have access to these materials, certainly reduce the manual labor that we had, and to create them, but also helped Charles and Dex launch their business. And now they're actually selling their stuff here. They won a major awards. In addition to the electronic set that you have seen here, they have since created other kits around, robotics, about vertical farming, about green energy, etc. So, so we're quite excited about that. And some of our teachers themselves have become trainers for Dex as well. So because they're, and this is a very affordable kit that teachers feel like they can actually buy one for themselves. And many even, you don't have to be a high income parent to be able to afford this kit for your students. Charles's dream is, every student, just like you have a set of, rulers, they have a math kit that they have to buy, that, all students will have access to this. And we're very excited about that.
It's a question from Rosario, and I too have this question as well. In terms of partnership development, right? How do you build these partnerships, or how have you been able to develop these relationships? I think it's really hard to develop them, right, and maintain them. That's a whole different question. How do you start them, and how do you maintain them? So, any insight there?
So let me maybe finish the next 2 slides, and I'll answer this question.
Great.
So that you get the breadth. This is another idea that we had, right? Which is there's basically a server called Rachel, which I have one here, and thinking about, how do we get teachers and students to be able to access the abundance of free learning materials, right, that are around. And they're called, it's basically a remote server, right, a remote area community hotspot. And again, we got a grant to do this. We were confident about bringing this to them because we also have World Possible is the organization that develops this, because of networking, partly. We identified a couple of people who actually have been working in technology for a long time, and another young person who was also a Ghanaian who's affiliated with World Possible, who has already been using this material. So we established a relationship with them. So he, in effect, became a consultant to us as to train teachers to be able to do this work. And then the third area is we have the relationship with a couple of universities here. One is Wellesley College. StemKid is actually an organization, college group that was developed at Wellesley University by a couple of students, and we've had interns from them the last 3, not this past summer, but the previous 3 summers, who've gone over to test their materials and to develop their materials. And we also have a relationship with Olin College of Engineering. They have a class called Affordable Design and Entrepreneurship. And they also have a relationship with another amazing organization called Agastya. And where, don't know if you remember from physics, you have these light boxes that shines like parallel light rays out, and you put a lens, and then you see like how the rays change depending on the convexity or whatever of the lens. So they used to have like a really clunky machine, and we've worked with these students to think about like, hey, can we make something that is actually either paper-based, right, where you have this slits here, you can drop your lens in here and do the same thing, or a more robust model, right? So, to answer your question, right? How do we build them? Partly, again, it's looking around the internet. And I actually have found, especially in the last 5 years, right? The ability to identify who's doing this work through Twitter, and sort of almost a snowball effect, thinking about like who's doing what work, has been really successful for me, right? So and 2 is within Ghana. Again, when I first started about 10 years ago, there were, at least to my awareness, right, not very many people doing STEM education. But as I identified people, we decided there are nodes of people, and we created this thing called this Ghana STEM network. And so they brought different people in, some doing education, some doing entrepreneurship, some doing sort of the intersection like Charles was. And that's how those relationships began to build, as we built a platform to communicate with each other about what we're doing. Olin is slightly different because I'm married to the guy who runs this class. So, but that said, we're still able to leverage those opportunities to work with their students. And in that case, we're just like many universities, right, have programs that are working overseas, if you will, to be able to identify those, because then they have some of the resources that as an organization do not have, to be able to leverage to bring students over, to bring resources, but with an aligned goal of actually, we are here not to help, right? The educators in this case in Ghana, but we know that they just need material support, right? The capacity. They don't have, as Ben Linder, the guy who runs this class, they don't have all the Lego pieces. So we're just trying to bring the right Lego pieces so that they can actually build upon what they already have. In terms of maintaining relationships, friendship is actually really important. Whenever I go there, and even when my folks go there, we dine together, we meet together, we chat, and we're very intentional. And I think this is what I learned also from my colleagues in Ghana, like that human relationship is really, it's actually foremost, not the transactional professional relationship, or not only, I should say. And being really clear about what everybody brings, right? So even in working with Agastya in this, and Olin in this case, with Wellesley, and when they bring over, we bring a lot of humility to our approach and our relationship, and make sure that, as we say, we're co-creating and we're developing these ideas together.
And I like that, right? You say co-creating for capacity, right? I think it was a conference. It used to be called the Customer, CESTEMER in New York, and that was the whole idea: co-creating, right? Where you play with other individuals, other organizations, and you find ways. Okay, what is the problem?
Yeah.
How can we work together? Like the question is, how can we work together?
Exactly.
To solve this, right? Find your strengths, and then here's what I'll do. Here's what you do. Set those foundations, and then make it work.
And especially important for somebody like me coming from the US. I'm like, I really don't know your community and your customs. So what do you really need? And even the design challenge, again, it's something that, like, Charles and he would stay in the apartment that I have in Ghana, and because he's a single god startup, like, couch surfing so type of thing. And he's like, can I stay over? We're like, yes. And then we talked to like 2 or 3 a.m. in the night. And then we're like, this is the type of event that, we want, partly because it may seem like, a short-term experience, but how do we create hype, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we together create cultural acknowledgement and change, right, about people, so that students and teachers have around STEM, right? So I hope that answers your question, Rosario. And so I go to this slide partly again, to again highlight what we see, and also to say that we and I have like stabilized our operations in Ghana, if you will. And personally, I think I'm slowing it down and possibly stepping away, partly because, again, as I said, 10 years ago when I started, I didn't see a lot happening. But as I have come to awareness and seen people build organizations and capacities, I feel like, they really have, there's always need, but, it is right for Ghanaians to be actually to continue this work, right? So I would say, when I first went, the Ghana Planetarium is probably like one of the most significant science institutions that were there. And it's been there since like for 20, 30 years, right? Jacob Ashong and his wife, Jane, Jacob was in the Nkrumah ministry at the beginning. He's like an amazing scientist, actually a molecular biologist by training, but like, I'm going to start and build a planetarium. So they've been running classes and doing field trips, et cetera, et cetera. Ghana Code Club, by contrast, is a newer thing where, and we've collaborated with them because we don't have coding curriculum. So they are now the technical expertise, and we switch roles to be the community experts because we have relationships already in these schools, right? So, so they've done tremendous work. Tina Apia is force, and she's doing tremendous work. Practical Education Network started actually here at MIT. Oh, now I'm blanking on her name. I can see her face, but she's actually moved to Ghana, right? So she's there. And it also Heather, anyway, she's doing the work. And Practical SAi is in another region, and started by a local amazing young man who just graduated university about 2 years ago, doing now tremendous work around science. And these are the other organizations who are doing similar work. Novan actually has been a lot of teacher training, and even the British Council, etc. They have now established new teacher training programs that really focus on hands-on STEM. So a lot of this work is actually happening, right? So, and really excited. So that's where I'm like, okay, we can maybe step back. Yes, have we followed on students? Let's see. What are some of the impacts? I'll just run through these slides quickly. These are some of the questions that, okay, I'll come back to this if you're interested, but these are the numbers. We haven't really expanded what we're doing for the last couple of years, and especially this last year because of COVID. We are not having a design challenge this coming year. And so these few the next slides just around, students' perception, right, of their ability, and like we said, the confidence, curiosity, etc. And some of the indicators that we used. Again, these are self-reported and not actually, teacher reports. So take that with a grain of salt. But these are some of the questions that we've asked, especially the young women who are in our class. This one, it says, think they can teach younger girls, younger students, the same activities. And we've definitely seen them like, hey, our teacher is in a professional development meeting today or some other meeting, and can we just get the keys and get the stuff so that we can actually do our experiments ourselves and get some other kids to come do it? They do that, okay? If they have stuff, and because a lot of the materials that we also use at the beginning and still use are everyday materials, they sometimes reproduce that and do that as well. And then are they more likely to look at STEM? So one of the things is we're thinking about transfer, right? If they see themselves as a science person, does that transfer to them thinking about themselves more as better students, right, as scholars? And so, and of course, in this case, whether they think about whether they would pursue STEM. So your question, Rosario, is on point. Partly, there were two problems that we had with asking this question. We worked with kids who are in upper primary and junior high, right? So that question means, are you going to go to senior secondary school to study science, right? Many of them expressed interest. Yes, we have teachers who've told us, and we, again, with my scientist hat, I'm like, the end is so small. But like saying, there are more kids this year who have, who than in the past who have decided that they want to study science. There are two problems that are social. One is there are not that many schools that focus on science in secondary school, which means that if a child decides to take science, they may have to leave their home and go to boarding school, which is an expense. And until not this year, but the year before, secondary school has fees, right? And regardless whether you are boarding or not. And so that is another disincentive for kids, especially from lower income families to be able to do that. So we have not been really able to track that. We have one or two examples of young women who have gone into and taken science, sure. But the tracking has been difficult, and I think tracking is hard enough here when people are doing like college, high school to college, right? Transitions. So that has been hard. We've tried calling parents, right? We've tried asking our teachers like, hey, will you maintain a relationship with your kids? But it's the tracking has been mixed, unfortunately.
Hi, Connie.
Hi, Claire.
Thank you for the presentation so far. I just had a question. Has your organization ever thought about sponsoring one of the students to continue into secondary education?
Yes, we have thought about it. It's also just a capacity.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So like, if the reason we had partnered with the organization called CPAS Ghana, at least in the junior high and level and elementary school, is because they were sponsoring kids to go to school. Like, so kids, school is free, but their uniform in the past and like books, etc. So they were paying those fees. So we at least knew that kids were staying in school. We had not been able to find a partner who does like the subsequent step, but that's actually.
Gotcha. No, I was just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, there are, but no, we've thought about it, but we haven't. So anyway, so this is again just mostly self-report from the young students. So anyway, so I'll just stop here. These are the people. These Priscilla Awua, Christian Saki, and Xavier O'Keen are on the ground staff who basically monitors and engages with all the monitor evaluate, right? All the teachers that we work with. We work with about 70 teachers, and about 20 of them in each of the schools, we have a lead teacher who sort of like works closely with our staff. And Isa here is one of the wealthy interns that we've had in the past. So these are super fun people that we work with. And this is our advisory board, and Dora, as well as Mimi, has helped me on this end with some of the work that we do. So basically all the work that we do on this side, the US side, is voluntary work. And then, our staff, Xavier, Christian, and Priscilla, there are paid staff on the Ghana side. So I think I'll stop there.
That's great. Thank you so much, Connie. There's so much in there. And as always, we never have enough time to go through everything. But I think you get some questions along the way. Those have been good. Any additional questions? I have a few, but I'll refrain for now.
Sorry, I realized I completely gone over.
I had a question that kind of came up throughout this, and I think you addressed this at certain points too. But in fear of succumbing to the white savior complex, it seems like you're doing a lot of community-based action approach to these problems, and having the students go out in their communities and identify problems and solutions. Have you found any of this or seen it through social science research to help more initiatives thrive in that sense?
Can you elaborate your question, whether those types of approach helps the programs, not the participants?
Right. I just know there's a whole bunch of social science research that looks at community-based action problems, where researchers will go out into the communities and help identify, or they'll have the community members identify problems and solutions, and they'll work together, which is basic. It seems like that's exactly what you're doing at certain points in the programs. I was just wondering if you based any of those ideas in that foundation of research itself.
Not anything specific that I can point to, but certainly some of the research that, again, it's done here. I think there's sort of like a positive research about, whether what works here works in these other international contexts, right? But there's certainly research here which says, if we show students, especially those from marginalized identities and communities, that where if they see science and math as a tool for improving their community, their engagement and intention to pursue those trajectories is higher. So that's sort of like a parallel to what you're saying, but
Yeah.
is that true for other contexts? Like, I don't think I haven't seen the research.
No, definitely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to add, good question indeed. I was going to ask, so you said you're thinking of winding things down a little bit from the exploratory side, given the rise of these other initiatives that are now filling the voids, if you will, right? So what does that mean for, I mean, is that a success in a way from your end, that you've been able to form this partnership? You've seen the nurturing of these other organizations that are coming through, that you feel the need to step back? Like what is the ecosystem like now over there, and how are you measuring that to know, like, yeah, I should step back now?
So a couple of measures, right? I mean, I think, like I said, the world is still highly inequitable. So there's, right? So, until every single child, right, gets those opportunities, it's not there. A couple of, in addition to the number of initiatives that has proliferated, the other that I have seen is a greater awareness, right, of the inequities within Ghana itself, right, for these types of opportunities. Because frankly, I love my pals, but a lot of them come from highly privileged backgrounds as well, right? And so they're like, oh, the math quiz and science quiz are awesome, but like, this is that band of schools that participate, right? And that is an increasing awareness, one. Two is there are problems here for me to work on as well, right? So one is only so much time in the day, and if I think about the expense that it costs me, right, to fly there and fly back, it's not non-zero. And what could that do, right, for local folks?
Yeah, because I think from our end, what I've noticed is there's a proliferation. We have a Wikipedia page where it's actually cataloging. It's now actually running by itself, all the STEM initiatives across Africa.
Yeah,
the whole continent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still growing, and we're trying to find more and more of them, and more people adding themselves. The issue now is becoming sort of capacity to support these initiatives, because they're all different. They're all doing different things. Some of them are not collaborating, right? They need funding. They need so many things, right? And so, like, that's where, like, from our end, we see that the issue moving forward in the next 10, 20 years would be in that space. Like, how do we enable these local entities to do well, right? To do what they're doing better.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've also, been engaged in, and which again is driven by our African colleagues, is called the African Open Science and Hardware Initiative. And there's and many of the folks have an education, initiatives that may be makerspace based, but also thinking about, like, how are they developing materials and resources that are suitable, right, for their communities? Because frankly, like, hey, some of the microscopes that we bring over are not, because of environmental conditions, frankly, right? And so and I see these networks, and we've had a couple of summits, of course, this year was not possible because of COVID, where people are beginning to come together and thinking about, like, and regional networks, right? Because that's where, again, how do you not have to fly people like thousands of miles or hundreds of miles to be able to come together? And so, and I completely agree with you, right? It's the infrastructure, right? Nobody, like, most people like to do the fun stuff, but how do you get the back end in a way that people can communicate with each other. And frankly, like WhatsApp is an amazing platform for collaboration other than in person.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing too. It could be fun. I think making these connections and connecting the dots and saying, you know, A should talk to B because you guys can fix C.
Yeah. And we had fun
Together.
with Agapia because we see that as a South-South collaboration, right? Because we're just Olin and Exploratory in some way is actually just making a intellectual transfer from that's not necessarily US based, just US mediated.
Any other questions from attendees here? I'm not seeing any from our virtual, let's just say, live stream people at this time, but yeah. So also just in terms of closing, is it that the Exploratory will be shutting down, or are you envision it changing into something else?
We're still having those conversations.
Okay.
But hey, if anybody is interested, you know, we've also talked about like, hey, can college groups adopt some of the clubs, etc. Like Claire, what you're saying, right? But instead of because and thinking about like what are the collaborations, right, that could be had.
I think this is we don't really talk about these things, right? Where has it ran its course in a way, or are you now morphing into something else, right? We just use the CB endpoint, like, oh, this is where we are now. But thank you for letting us in your thinking and the journey so far, as we are also just making our way through this.
Yeah, it is true. Like we don't think we start a thing. It's like, when is it going to end?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel real. We're gonna wrap up, but I mean, the fact that even as our teachers are transferring to different schools and sort of outside of our immediate impact, they are requesting like, is it okay if I run a similar club here, right, at one new school? That sort of the sort of organic dissemination that we are looking to have, and in some of the design challenges, one which we ran with the ministry, or one component of the ministry, we're saying like, it's possible for you to do this, so why don't you take it and run? So it's sort of like proof of concept type of not quite turnkey, but kind of turnkey approach, right?
That can be prolific because then you don't have to be there all the time, right? You've enabled that, and built capacity, as you say, co-create capacity. And I think that's the long-term impact that it's hard to track, and you need to somehow find a way to track it. Right? All of us are trying this. It's really difficult, but thank you so much, Connie. That was wonderful, and I'm sure we're probably going to have you back for something else and chatting, to our fellows.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about your project.
Yeah, there's many different. All our residents are working on different projects, and so we're definitely going to keep in touch. And with that, that concludes our 2020 seminar series. Connie, thank you for anchoring us at the end there. And look out for 2021 and all the new talks from our residents and our guest speakers. And also the Fellows Program is looking for the C5s. These are Cohort 5 Fellows. Our application is open now. The program starts in March. And also at Summer Interns, the application is open as well. That program starts in June. So if you have students or yourself are interested, go to our website, stemadvocacy.org, to check us out. And with that, thank you and have a good Saturday, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.